There are 3 moments in life that rearrange you permanently. Mine came with a shrimp fork, a linen napkin, and a receipt that wasn't mine. Let me start here, not at the beginning, because frankly, I don't know where the beginning was anymore. But at the moment her laugh made my stomach twist. The restaurant was too loud for real intimacy, but she laughed anyway. The kind of laugh she hadn't used with me in over a year. That breathy, polished, too quick giggle. The one that's less about joy and more about social choreography. It was her "you're impressive" laugh. Except I wasn't the one telling the joke. I was sitting at a long table of strangers. Her co-workers, clients, plus ones like me, husbands and wives who all knew how to make small talk sound like big ideas. I was wedged between a man who only talked about golf and a woman who only talked about herself in third person. Across the table, Jolene, my wife of 5 years, partner of 10, looking like someone I hadn't met yet. Same face, new mask. She hadn't looked at me all night. Not once. Not even a passing glance. I could have been the waiter. Then came the toast. A partner from her firm stood up, raising a glass to excellence, growth, and the brilliant minds that drive both. People clapped. I half-smiled. That's when I saw her hand, resting lightly on the forearm of the man beside her. Not a touch. A placement. Subtle, rehearsed, deliberate. I don't know his name. He wore one of those watches that costs more than my truck and had that glassy-eyed way of looking at women like he already owns the ending. I couldn't look directly at her, so I focused on my plate. The shrimp was cold. The wine had a name I couldn't pronounce. My wedding ring felt too tight. Then the check came. Jolene and her colleague laughed about who'd expense it faster. She opened her clutch and pulled out her firm's corporate card. The waiter, flustered and too green for that job, accidentally dropped the folded receipt near my foot before returning with the corrected one. No one saw it, but I did. I picked it up, barely looking at it. I wish I hadn't. I wish I had folded it, stuffed it in my pocket, and ignored it until I could burn it in private. But I read it. And on the top corner, printed clearly, room service, 1 king bed suite, 2 guests, ordered 3 nights ago. And her name was on it. Not ours. Hers. I blinked. Not once. Not twice. I blinked 10,000 times in my head, trying to unsee it. Unread it. Unknow what I now knew. I didn't make a sound. I didn't twitch. I folded the receipt slowly, carefully, as if it were made of glass. And I left. I stood up, nodded like I was heading to the restroom, and walked straight through the lobby, out the side door, and into the night. No storm, no drama, just silence and the sound of my shoes against the pavement. She didn't follow. She didn't even notice. That was 4 days ago. She still doesn't know I saw the receipt. But now I see everything. I slept in my truck that night. Not because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I've got a brother 20 minutes away and a key to his place. But because I couldn't stand the idea of explaining why I needed to crash on his couch. Not when I didn't even have the full story myself. All I had was that receipt, folded in my jacket pocket like a burning truth I wasn't ready to unfold again. And I had silence. A truck cab filled with silence, so thick it felt like another person breathing beside me. The next morning, I drove aimlessly for 2 hours. I skipped work. Called in sick. I've never called in sick. Not once in 9 years. But my voice cracked when I told my supervisor, food poisoning. And he didn't ask any questions. He probably heard it. That edge in your throat when your stomach isn't the problem. When I finally went home, our home, I didn't walk in like I usually do. I didn't slam the door, or call out her name, or toss my keys in the bowl by the fridge. I stood outside in the driveway for 10 whole minutes, just staring at the front door like it might explode if I opened it wrong. But she wasn't there. I stepped inside to an empty living room, lights off, candles still burned down from the last date night she arranged 3 weeks ago. I remember how she set them up and called it a reset, but couldn't look me in the eye the whole time. I remember how she pushed the chicken around on her plate and checked her phone under the table, smiling at nothing. I sat on the edge of the couch, pulled the receipt from my jacket, and stared at her name again. Room service, king bed suite, 2 guests, 3 nights ago. I turned it over and noticed something I hadn't seen the night before. A hotel name, and a 4-digit number scribbled in faint blue pen ink on the back. A room number. I didn't know what I was planning to do, but I stood up, grabbed my keys again, and drove. The hotel was nicer than I expected. One of those boutique places with exposed brick walls and concierge staff, trained to not ask questions. I walked straight to the front desk and froze. I hadn't planned what to say, so when the woman smiled at me and asked, "Checking in?" I just nodded. I gave her Jolene's name, told her I was picking up something left in the room. She hesitated for a second, then turned, clicked around on her computer, and handed me something. Not a receipt, not a lost item form. A keycard. Room 415. I should have walked away. I should have handed it back, mumbled something about a mistake, and left. But I didn't. I took the elevator up and counted every ding like a warning bell. I stood outside the door to 415, holding that card in my hand like it weighed 20 pounds. And then, I opened it. The room smelled like perfume. Not the kind Jolene wears. Lighter. More citrus. The curtains were pulled halfway. The bed was made, but uneven. There was a wine glass by the window with a faint lipstick mark on the rim. A woman's blazer draped over the arm of the chair. No one was there, but the room felt recent. Then I saw it. On the nightstand, sitting half-buried under a hotel notepad, was something I recognized instantly. Her bracelet. The one I gave her 3 Christmases ago. A small silver band with her initials engraved on the clasp. She never takes it off. Ever. Except here. Except now. My ears started ringing. That kind of pressure pain where it feels like your head is underwater. I walked to the bathroom, half expecting to find someone behind the door. But it was empty. Clean towels. Complimentary soaps. 2 toothbrushes, 1 pink, 1 green, tucked into a single cup. I stared at them for longer than I want to admit. I didn't take anything. Didn't make a mess. I just stood there in that quiet room, breathing in the scent of someone else's version of my marriage. Someone who got her bracelet, her laughter, her hotel key. Then I placed the room key on the desk. And I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just walked back down the hallway, down the elevator, out the glass doors, and back into a world where none of this made sense yet. Back into the storm I never saw coming. The strangest part about betrayal is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps. It's not a gunshot. It's a faucet left on, quietly flooding the floor while no one's home. I didn't storm into our kitchen screaming. I didn't accuse her of anything. In fact, I didn't even speak. I just sat there, at our small round table, drinking stale coffee while she walked through the door with that same breezy, performative smile. "Oh, you're home early," she said, hanging up her coat like the world was normal. I nodded. Didn't feel great. She paused for half a second. A flicker of calculation passed over her face. Then, just like that, she returned to her routine, untying her boots, checking her phone, humming a melody I didn't recognize. She was good. I'll give her that. Not brilliant, not heartless, just rehearsed. The next few days were a masterclass in emotional theater. She kissed me in the morning. She asked how work was. She even made tacos on Tuesday, which used to be our thing. She didn't once mention the company dinner, or the fact that I left in the middle of it without a word. Not a single question, as if she didn't want the answer. So, I started watching her. Quietly. Closely. Jolene always claimed she was an open book, but I've come to learn those are the people who underline the wrong sentences on purpose. Every night after dinner, she would pour a single glass of wine and scroll through her phone for emails. I started noticing the way she tilted the screen ever so slightly away when I walked past. The subtle changes in how often she charged her phone. And that strange little app I'd never seen before. An encrypted messenger with a minimalist black icon that disappeared whenever I entered the room. I didn't confront her. I took notes. I started leaving earlier for work, then doubling back an hour later to sit in the driveway with the engine off, watching our front door. 2 out of 5 mornings, she didn't leave for work when she said she did. Instead, she paced the kitchen on the phone, then disappeared into the bathroom for nearly an hour. Once, she came out dressed in completely different clothes than she left our bedroom in. But it wasn't just the logistics that got to me. It was the quiet details. The perfume I found in her purse that I'd never smelled on her. The missing pair of earrings I bought her for our anniversary. Gone for 2 weeks, then suddenly back in their box as if they'd never left. The voice memos on her smartwatch. All deleted before I could read them, except one, which auto-synced to our shared cloud before she could erase it. It was short. 6 seconds. Her voice, soft. Nervous. I'm not sure how much longer I can lie to him. He's noticing things. That was it. I listened to that clip 10 times, alone in my garage. And every time, I flinched. I still hadn't told her I knew. About the hotel, the receipt, the room key. I carried those truths like broken glass in my coat pocket. Dangerous to touch, but impossible to throw away. I wasn't ready to blow things up. Not yet. I wanted the full picture. I wanted her to give it to me, voluntarily or not. And most of all, I wanted to know one thing no receipt, no keycard, no perfume bottle could answer. Why? Because if I knew the why, maybe I could decide what came next. So I did something I never thought I would. That night, while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone. I'd never done it before. Not once in 10 years. It wasn't locked, but that almost made it worse. She hadn't even bothered to password protect it. She thought I'd never look. That was her real security setting, my trust. I opened her messages. And what I found wasn't an affair. Not exactly. Not yet. But I found the seeds of one. Flirtation dressed up in sarcasm. Emojis used like fingertips. Long messages sent at hours when I was asleep in the same bed. And a name I'd never seen before. Saved only as E. No last name. Just E. I scrolled. And then I stopped breathing. There, in one thread, was a photo. Nothing explicit. Nothing that would get anyone banned. But intimate. A mirror selfie of Jolene in the same hotel room. Wearing my shirt. My shirt. Sent with the caption, "Guess who's thinking of you?" I put the phone down. Not on the table. Not on the charger. On the floor. Because I knew if I didn't lower it slowly, I might throw it across the room. She came out of the bathroom 5 minutes later. Hair damp, skin glowing, humming again. And I smiled at her. I smiled like everything was fine. Because this wasn't the moment. But soon. The moment would come. And it wouldn't need shouting. Just silence, and the truth. Most people think that leaving someone happens all at once. One suitcase, one slammed door, one final fight where things are said that can't be taken back. But that's the loud way. That's the kind people remember because it's dramatic. Fireworks, smoke, debris. But the real leaving? The kind that cuts deeper? That happens in silence. Slowly. Room by room. Day by day. One drawer emptied. One password changed. One future rewritten without asking. That's how I began to leave Jolene. Not with a bang. With a plan. See, after I saw that mirror photo, her in my shirt, smiling at someone who wasn't me, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't confront her, because something inside me had already shifted. I no longer needed confirmation. I no longer needed to catch her in the act. What I needed was control. For the first time in months, I wasn't confused. I was clear. The next morning, while she was on her conference call in the other room, laughing a little too hard, her "I'm the favorite" tone in full swing, I sat in the garage with my laptop. I opened an old savings account I hadn't touched in years, one my grandfather helped me set up before he passed. I'd kept it with $92. 33 in it, barely enough for gas and a fast food meal, but the account still worked. I transferred just under $2,000 into it. Slowly, in chunks, from our joint account. Not enough to trigger questions, but enough to build something. A float. An escape hatch. I also started backing things up. Bank statements, phone records, photos, screenshots of the hotel receipt, the toothbrushes, the messages from E. I saved them all to a USB drive I labeled tax stuff and tucked inside an old box of Christmas decorations she never touches. I didn't want revenge. I wanted insurance. Just in case. Jolene was clever, but she was also careless in ways that matter. She thought because I was quiet, I was weak. She thought because I didn't ask questions, I didn't have any. But what she didn't realize is that silence isn't surrender. Sometimes, silence is the chamber where a plan is loading. I began testing things, saying small lies to see how far hers went. One night, I told her I had to cover an overnight shift at work, even though I didn't. She smiled and kissed me goodbye at 10 p.m. sharp. I drove to a gas station across town and sat in my truck with a thermos of black coffee, watching the hours tick by. I came home at 5:30 a.m., eyes red, smelling of cheap coffee and asphalt. She never asked a single question. Not where I went. Not if I was tired. Not even if I'd eaten. That's when I knew. She was waiting for me to leave. Maybe not consciously, but emotionally, she'd already built the version of this where I was gone. Maybe she wanted me to be the one to pull the ripcord so she wouldn't have to be the villain. Maybe she thought if I left first, she could tell herself, he gave up. But I wasn't going to give her that. Not yet. Instead, I started leaving the way ghosts do, by becoming harder to feel. I stopped texting her during the day. I stopped making coffee in the morning. I stopped folding her laundry, stopped asking how her meetings went. I didn't stop loving her, not exactly. It's hard to shut that off like a switch. But I stopped feeding it. I let the love go hungry. And it got weaker. The more I shrank away, the more she seemed to thrive. She went out more often, came home later, slept deeper. Once, she even left her phone unlocked and face up on the bed while she showered. That's where I saw it. An invite to a conference in Denver next month. Fully paid. 2 guests. A suite. She hadn't mentioned any work travel. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I picked up her phone, opened the calendar, and added a small note on the day she was supposed to leave. Don't forget to look behind the mirror. Then I locked the phone and put it back exactly where I found it. Because by the time she leaves for Denver, I won't be here. The house will still be here. Her clothes, her routines, her stories. But I won't. And the mirror? Well, she'll know what that means soon enough. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of day that feels invisible on a calendar. Mid-week, mid-month, mid-everything. Jolene was in the middle of her usual routine. Yoga pants, top knot, AirPods in, pretending to meditate while actually scrolling through her phone in the sunroom. I could see her reflection in the glass. That was the thing about her. She was always visible, but never transparent. She left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she brewed her ginger tea. Not password locked. Not closed. Just sitting there, like a dare. I wasn't planning on snooping. That morning, I had intended to go to the hardware store to pick up replacement bulbs and a bag of salt for the driveway. But something stopped me. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was timing. Maybe it was the invisible moment every man in my position feels when he realizes today is the day the blindfold comes off. I walked over slowly, quietly, and tilted the screen. Nothing shocking at first. Emails, spreadsheets, her calendar. But then I noticed a second browser open behind her main tabs. When I clicked it, my stomach didn't drop. It clenched. An anonymous email account. Alias, Brightlight41. Not her usual handle. Not work-related. The inbox was sparse, mostly confirmations, password resets, and one thread with the subject line, "Not yet, but soon." I opened it. It was a back and forth with someone named E. Mercer. Short messages, but filled with innuendo. References to those 3 nights, plans for future weekends, and a chilling phrase that looped in my mind for hours after I read it. He still has no idea. I think he wants to be blind. Like he needs the denial to survive. She was talking about me. Not with venom. With clinical detachment. Like I was a puzzle piece she'd already discarded. I closed the laptop exactly how I found it, walked out the back door, and sat in the car with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went pale. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat in silence while the heater hummed, and thought about how betrayal isn't always sharp. It can be sterile, clean, emotionless, professional. That was what got to me. Not that she was slipping away, but that she'd already filed me under obstacle, like I was a scheduling conflict to be worked around. So I started the next phase. I moved our marriage license from the filing cabinet to my truck. I began redirecting my mail to a P.O. box I opened under a different zip code. I collected small items that had personal meaning to me, my dad's old lighter, the carved eagle from our Montana trip, my high school watch that never worked right, and put them into a duffel bag under the back seat. And then I tested something. That night, as we sat on the couch watching a show she was only half invested in, I asked her calmly, "If your work asked you to move cities, would you?" She paused only a second before replying. "I mean, yeah, maybe. Depends on the offer." No hesitation. No mention of us. Not even a glance in my direction. That was the answer I didn't know I needed. She didn't see it as betrayal. She saw it as inevitable evolution. Something that happened to couples who grew apart. But we didn't grow apart. She walked off the path, hand in hand with someone named E. Mercer, while I stayed in place, watering the garden, fixing the roof, paying bills, keeping our shared calendars synced. I knew then that when she went on that conference trip to Denver, I wouldn't be here. But I wouldn't leave in the way she expected. No note on the fridge, no last-minute tearful confrontation in the driveway. That's not what I wanted. Instead, I would remove myself from the narrative so cleanly, so precisely, that she'd look around and realize I'd been fading for weeks. That she'd ignored every empty hanger, every missing mug, every erased footprint. I wanted her to feel the ghost of me, not the man who screamed, but the man who left quietly enough that it echoed. I went to bed early that night. She stayed up, typing, probably responding to Mercer, probably drafting her own version of the future. She didn't kiss me goodnight, and I didn't turn to face her. Because tomorrow, I was going to do something that would change everything. Not out of anger, out of clarity. It started with the fridge. I opened it one morning and just stood there. It was too quiet. Normally, there's a faint hum or a subtle click when the compressor kicks on. That day, it was still, like it was holding its breath. The orange juice hadn't been touched in 4 days. The milk was a week expired. The leftovers she swore she'd finish were quietly decomposing in the back, like time capsules of indifference. And right then, staring at rotting pad thai and wilting lettuce, I felt it. The house was starting to notice my absence. I hadn't technically left yet. My clothes were still in the closet, my tools still in the garage, and my name still on the mortgage. But I had pulled out. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I had stopped existing in that space as a participant. I had become a shadow, and the house, which had once been loud with the noise of domestic routine, had become awkwardly silent, like it was waiting for someone to speak at a funeral. Jolene began to pick up on it, though not directly. She'd started asking vague questions like, "Have you been okay lately?" Or, "Are you mad at me for something?" But her tone was always dipped in self-preservation, like she didn't really want an honest answer, just the reassurance that nothing would change, that I would continue playing the role, that I would stay in the script she wrote without ever flipping the page. But the truth was, I was already gone, and she was starting to sense it. On Thursday, she came home with Thai food, my favorite dish from that little place on 7th. She always said gave her a stomachache. She never used to offer to pick up from there. She'd always make a face like the smell alone offended her. But suddenly, there she was, waving a takeout bag like it was a peace treaty. "I thought we could eat together tonight," she said, too casually. I smiled. Not a warm one. The kind of smile you give a stranger who holds the elevator door. We ate in silence. She tried to bring up vacation plans, asking if I still wanted to go upstate for our anniversary weekend. She said it like she forgot which date it even was. My fork hovered over a piece of chicken and never moved. "I thought you liked the cabin," she added, poking at her noodles. "I do," I replied. "But it's booked." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I canceled it last week." That caught her off guard. She covered it quickly, nodding like it made sense. But I saw the flicker, the crack in her control, the shift in posture. She was losing the thread, and she knew it. I had just taken one of her chess pieces off the board and didn't even gloat. Later that night, after she fell asleep on the couch pretending to watch something on Netflix, I slipped into her home office. Not to snoop. I already knew everything I needed to know. I just wanted to see if anything had changed. It had. The blazer she always used for travel was already dry cleaned and hanging behind the door. Her suitcase was pulled halfway from the closet. And on her desk, tucked beneath a printed flight itinerary, was a small black notebook. Leather-bound. The kind you only write in when you're trying to capture something real. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. The pages weren't full. Just a few scribbles, some lists, and then, one page, dead center, a short paragraph that read, "I think he knows. He stopped asking questions. He doesn't touch me anymore. Doesn't even look at me like I exist. It's almost like he's punishing me with stillness. I keep thinking he's going to explode. But he just disappears more every day. It's worse than yelling. I feel like I'm living with a ghost who used to love me." I closed the book, gently. My hands didn't shake. She didn't get it. Not yet. Not fully. This wasn't punishment. It was departure. This was me, slipping out of the seams of her life, thread by thread. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because she had already replaced me with someone else, emotionally, if not physically. She'd built a life around half-truths, and now I was simply giving her what she wanted, a version of me she could live without. But I wasn't going to disappear without a trace. No, I wanted her to feel it. The hollow space. The questions. The delay before the realization set in. So the next morning, I did something subtle. I removed all my contacts from our synced Google account. My name vanished from her calendar reminders, our shared shopping lists, our Spotify playlists. Our digital tether began to dissolve. Slowly. Invisibly. When she noticed, she'd assume it was a glitch. But soon, she'd see the pattern. And when she left for Denver, she'd find what I left behind. A single sheet of paper, taped behind the bathroom mirror, where she always touches up her makeup before travel. It would say only 2 words. I noticed. The morning she left for Denver, the house felt like it had already forgotten her. There was a strange stillness in the walls, the kind that wraps around you when something unnatural is about to happen, like standing in the eye of a storm you can't see, but feel, just beneath the surface of everything ordinary. Jolene moved through the kitchen in her usual half-panicked, overly choreographed pre-trip flurry, dropping her keys, rechecking her boarding pass, pretending to yawn like she hadn't been up all night packing. She avoided looking at me directly. I was sitting at the table, sipping my coffee, unmoved, calm, watching the performance like it was the final act of a play I'd already walked out on. She kissed my forehead, awkward and cold. "I'll text when I land," she said. "I know," I replied, folding my napkin, placing it neatly beside the untouched toast she'd made me. Her suitcase wheels rattled against the front steps. Then the door closed. I didn't watch her leave. I listened instead to the silence that followed. That moment after the door clicks shut and you realize the room is no longer shared. It's yours now. Entirely. I gave her 4 hours. 4 hours to get to the airport, board the flight, and switch off airplane mode. 4 hours to feel completely in control. Then I began. The bags were already packed. Not in suitcases. That would have been too obvious. Just 2 ordinary moving boxes sealed and stored in the garage beneath labeled junk, winter coats, and camping gear. She never checked either. Inside was everything I needed to start over. Bank documents, birth certificate, passport, the USB drive I'd been quietly building for weeks. I left the rest, the furniture, the plates, the wedding album. I wanted her to feel their weight after I was gone. I wanted her to open the drawers and find all of me still there, except me. The letter was the last thing I placed. It wasn't dramatic. No 10-page manifesto. No bitter monologue. Just a simple white envelope, tucked behind the bathroom mirror like I planned. I knew she'd see it. She always touched up her mascara right before heading out for business dinners. Always used that mirror. The same one where she once whispered, half drunk, "I don't know if I love you the same way anymore," and laughed like it wasn't a knife to the throat. The letter inside contained 2 sentences. "You erased me in whispers, so I left in silence. This time, you'll have to explain it to yourself." No name. No goodbye. Just closure in its cleanest form. By noon, I was gone. I didn't go to my brother's. Didn't run to a hotel. I went to a rental property I'd quietly signed for 2 weeks ago, under a short-term lease, paid in cash. It was small, a 2-room cabin tucked behind a long gravel road, surrounded by pine trees and no cell service. The kind of place where no one asks questions if you stay quiet and pay on time. I turned off my phone. All of them. The one she knew about, the backup I bought, the work line I hadn't answered in days. For the first time in a decade, I was unreachable. And God, it felt like breathing after years underwater. But while I disappeared physically, I left the idea of me behind. And that's what started to unravel her. Because the day after she landed, I logged into our shared cloud one final time. Not to check her location. Not to spy. Just to watch the changes. Within 36 hours, she'd deleted every playlist we ever shared. Within 48, she'd removed my name from our streaming accounts, canceled the grocery delivery subscription, and added a new name to her contacts. E. Mercer, home. But it was what happened on day 3 that told me everything I needed to know. She logged into our shared photo drive, an account we never really used except for a few vacation uploads. And there, she uploaded 2 new images. The first was a photo of our empty bedroom, taken from the doorway, lights off, bed still made. It was captioned "Ghosted." The second was a selfie, tears in her eyes, no makeup, hair unbrushed, and beneath it, a single word. Why? She'd finally noticed. Not just that I was gone, but that I had planned it. That every absence had been deliberate. That she'd underestimated the quiet man who folded her laundry and memorized her routines. That the ghost in her house had been collecting receipts in silence while she rehearsed her betrayal like it was a speech at a corporate gala. I stared at the photo for a long time. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. Not free. Not vindicated. Just emptied in the cleanest way possible. Like a closet with no clothes and no dust. Just space, finally cleared. I closed the laptop. And for the first time in years, I slept. I woke up to birds. Not an alarm. Not the clinking of Jolene's earrings on the bathroom counter. Not the vibration of unread messages or the quiet guilt of sleeping beside someone who wasn't really there anymore. Just birds. I lay in that unfamiliar cabin bed for a long time, eyes open, staring at the wooden ceiling. There was no noise from neighbors, no car doors, no sirens, no emails. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel empty, it felt earned. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight in my chest. That crushing, invisible pressure I used to carry around like a default setting, it was gone, replaced by something else. Not joy exactly, something quieter, stillness with breath in it. I made coffee in a chipped old mug I found in the cabinet and sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket that smelled like cedar and dust. The wind moved through the trees with no destination. The world didn't need anything from me. No one was asking where I was. No one was demanding a version of me that made them more comfortable. It was just me, and enough. I didn't check my phone. I didn't reread her message. I didn't log in to see what she posted next. I let it go, because that part of my story was over. Not with a bang, not with a final fight or some dramatic confrontation. It ended the moment I chose to stop asking why she did it and started asking why I stayed. Because the truth is, I didn't lose her. I left her. And in doing so, I found parts of myself that I didn't even know were still alive. 3 weeks passed, then a month. I stayed in the cabin, working odd remote jobs, freelancing logistics spreadsheets for companies that didn't care about resumes as long as the numbers added up. I got used to eating simply, reading again, going to sleep without a hollow beside me. I started journaling, not to remember her, but to remember me. Then one day, I drove into town for groceries and passed a bookstore with a hand-painted sign that read "Coffee and Paperbacks." Inside was a woman wearing a denim jacket and glasses too large for her face, organizing a crooked shelf of used thrillers. She looked up, smiled, asked if I needed help finding anything. I said no, just needed a quiet place. She nodded. There's a corner by the window that gets good morning light. That's where the people who don't want to talk usually sit. I smiled, truly, for the first time in what felt like years. And I sat. She didn't ask my name. I didn't ask hers. We existed without performance. No past, no projections. Just two people, in the same quiet. And maybe that was all I ever wanted. Not fireworks. Not a dramatic ending. Not revenge or karma or begging. Just a place where I could finally hear myself think. And someone who didn't need me to be anyone else.